everyone, this is Tingting Zhang. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to continue with the topic from my last video, what you need to know about the first year of piano lessons. In that video, I provided a checklist to all piano beginners, and I talked about the first two fundamental elements on the list, which are the music reading skill and the hand position. If you haven't watched that video, make sure to check out the link below. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 other fundamentals that will help you navigate through the first year of learning. We have a lot to talk about, so let's dive right in. The third component on my checklist is technique. The development of technique is at the core of piano training throughout every stage. But here I must say, technique itself is not the goal. Music is. You want to be able to freely express yourself through music. Technique is the vehicle to take you to where you want to go and to help you achieve the sound you have in your mind. So the better your technique is, the freer your expression will be. For kids, the early years of training are crucial to their technique development. Both good and bad habits can form quickly at this stage. Now let's take a closer look at what technique the beginners will learn in the first year. Usually, they will learn 2 basic ways of playing: legato and staccato. Legato means to connect the notes and play them smoothly, like this. Staccato is completely the opposite. The notes are detached, and the touch needs to be very fast so that we can produce a bouncy and crisp sound. Like that. Most beginners can master the staccato touch really well, but playing legato is much harder. That is because piano basically is a percussion instrument. You know, when we play a key, it activates the hammer to hit the string, and that's how the sound is produced. But as soon as the hammer hits the string, the sound starts to decay. It doesn't have any sustaining power like the string instrument does. That's why it actually takes years for all of us to play a really good legato. So I usually ask my young students to start with lifting their arms and dropping their hands into the key to play the notes separately, like this. There are several benefits of starting out this way. Number 1, it will keep their hand, wrist, arm, elbow, and shoulder relaxed, since they don't have to hold one finger down until playing the next note. It eliminates the tension, which may build up in their muscles otherwise. Number 2, students can learn to use their arm weight to play. This way, even though their fingers are small and weak, they can still produce a nice and solid tone. At the same time, we can focus on their fingertips and make sure they give strong support when playing each note. Number 3, playing the notes separately helps students to maintain a proper hand position. If they start with legato touch right away, their fingers will most likely be flat and their palm will also collapse due to the tension. So now you see, at the early stage of piano study, the main focus of technique is to develop the strength and independence of our fingers to improve the coordination between 2 hands, at the same time, stay relaxed. Over the years, I had an interesting observation. I found that most adult beginners tend to be very cautious about their hand positions, sometimes paid too much attention to how they held their hands and moved their fingers. Somehow, they lose the natural flow in their muscles, and that can create a lot of tension and stress. So my advice for adult players is that don't over-examine yourself. It doesn't matter if all of your fingers are perfectly angled. Instead, focus on the sound, the music. Your physical movements will then follow your musical intentions, and you will be able to pick up more natural momentum in your playing. And guess what? Everything becomes easier. Most kids, on the other hand, couldn't care less about their hand positions. They really need constant reminders from their teachers and parents. Speaking of technique, we have to talk about finger exercise. The most common exercises include scales, arpeggios, chords, and etudes. I remember when I was a beginner, my first piano teacher back in China taught me to play C major scale and arpeggio in my very first piano lesson. That was hard. Remembering where to cross under and over with different fingers can be overwhelming for little kids. It's also impossible for them to control their thumbs and not to make any accent. Later, I learned from my pedagogy class at Northwestern that it doesn't have to be this difficult at the beginning. There's a simplified version of the scale that is perfect for young beginners. It's called five-finger pattern, and it goes like this. We usually start with one hand, and later we add the other hand. The notes are easy to remember. Students don't have to worry about to cross under with their thumbs. In addition, teachers can use this pattern to introduce all major and minor keys. For example, we can play A minor. And then we can move on to the black keys. This is D flat major, by the way. Likewise, there's also an easy version of the arpeggio. It's a broken chord pattern that goes between two hands. We can start with 2 octaves like this and gradually expand to 4 octaves if students feel comfortable. I think these 2 exercises are really fantastic daily warm-ups for young beginners. Now, let's move on to the 4th component on the checklist. It's music theory. Some parents think it's secondary, something less important than piano playing. Well, that is a big misconception. Theory is an essential part of the musical training, and it should absolutely be included in every beginner's piano lessons. If you know what is being taught in music theory, then you would understand why I said so. Music theory is like a big umbrella. It covers many areas. At the beginning level, students first learn musical notation. That includes the treble clef, the bass clef, the staffs, and all kinds of notes, such as quarter note, half note, whole note, eighth note, and the rests. Then rhythm is a big part of the beginning theory. Students learn time signatures, such as 4/4, 3/4, 2/4, and they learn how to count. Next, some basic musical symbols and markings are introduced, including dynamic signs, forte piano, crescendo, diminuendo, and we also learn the repeat sign, ritardando, tie, fermata, and so on. Later, we introduce the intervals and chords. Ear training is also part of the music theory. Over the years, I found the best way to teach music theory to beginner is to blend those conceptual ideas into the pieces they're playing so that they become part of the music. For example, the beginning pieces are usually short, only have a few notes, and they can sound pretty bland and boring. This is why I always ask my students to follow the dynamic signs closely, because when we apply dynamics, immediately a small simple piece can become interesting and expressive. My experience is that when students pay enough attention, they can successfully show the contrast. Not only do they have fun playing, but also they start listening to themselves more carefully. If you ask them to do this in every piece they play, it will soon become a habit, and that's a great habit to have. Another example is the intervals we learn, such as second, third, fourth, and fifth, and also the tonic and dominant chords. These help students to identify the key in a piece and help them to find their hand positions and to read the notes much faster. You see, theory and playing complement each other. They're really inseparable. I know some teachers offer an additional class to teach theory to a small group of students of the same age and level. Other teachers, including myself, teach theory as part of the one-on-one private lesson. Either way is fine. Just make sure your kids get to learn music theory right from the beginning. Here, I want to share another tip on rhythm training. I found the best way to help beginners to establish a strong sense of rhythm is to let them count the beat out loud instead of counting in their minds. Counting out loud will make them hear clearly if their beats are steady or if they play every note long enough. Counting in mind will not be as accurate, and some kids may just forget to count at all. You see, a small, simple task can make a huge difference. After doing this for a few weeks, counting becomes the most natural thing when they play music. It prepares them for more complicated rhythms later on. The final component on the list is to develop a good practice routine. I think anyone who takes piano lessons seriously understands the importance of practice. The question is, how do we help our kids to develop an effective and sustainable practice routine? In my opinion, I think the teacher, the parents, and the student need to work together as a team. The teacher should come up with a plan for the student, and the parents need to ensure the plan is carried out at home. Let me explain in more detail. For every student who came to study with me, I always tell them in our first lesson, playing piano is like brushing teeth, eating meals, and drinking water. It's something you do every day. You don't have to practice a lot at first. 20 to 30 minutes is fine because children's concentration spans are short. But try to stick with it. Keep up the routine every day. In each lesson, I would also tell my students how many times they need to practice for each piece and where are the difficult spots that they need to isolate and drill on, and what my expectation is for them when they come back next week. This gives the students a clear game plan for the week. I also asked some students to keep a practice log, writing down the date and time of their practice, what pieces they worked on, and how many times they practiced hands separate versus hands together, etc. I must say, it helped a great deal for my daydreaming kids to track their own progress, and it also helped me to understand how they practice at home. Now, let's talk about the other team member, the parents. Parents really played a big role in establishing kids' practice routines. Please note, when I say this, I don't mean parents have to drop what they do, sit down and practice with their kids every day. No, I don't expect my students' parents to do that because I don't believe that's a sustainable way to help our kids in the long run. But for young beginners, such as a 4 or 5-year-old, I think it would be really nice if the parents can spend some time listening to their kids practice. Be their audience and cheerleader. It gives the kids a strong psychological support and makes a great bonding time. When students get older, however, parents should give them more room and space to grow and learn independently. Otherwise, kids will always rely on parents to help with their practice, and that can be problematic. Here I have 3 tips to share with the parents. Number 1, try to set a fixed time for kids to practice. Nowadays, kids' schedules are packed with all kinds of activities, sports, play dates, art classes, etc. No matter how busy they are, try to find the same time every day for them to practice. For example, it could be the first thing they do after coming home from school. Remember, consistency is the key. If parents are forgetful about piano practice, how can the child keep it up? Number 2, practice as early as possible. It's best to do it before dinner. After a full day of school and other activities, kids get pretty tired by 7 p.m., and we do too. It's not a good idea to practice after dinner. They can't concentrate well and they're impatient. Especially for little kids, the earlier the better. Number 3, try to create a distraction-free environment. This is particularly challenging during pandemic since every family member is home all the time. But try to limit the distraction by telling other family members to stay quiet and reducing the traffic in the room where student practices. It takes some effort, but should be manageable. Alright, that concludes my discussions on the first year of piano lessons. Let's quickly review the 5 fundamental elements on my checklist. They are music reading skill, hand position, technique, theory, and a good practice routine. If you have these 5 things under control, you and your child are off to a good start. There will be ups and downs on the road, but you now have more knowledge, therefore are more prepared to cope with any challenge. I wish the best of luck to all piano beginners. May music forever enrich your lives. Thanks for watching. If you like my video, remember to subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.